Hi, my name is Brent Rice, and today I'll be giving my intercultural speech. C.S. Lewis once said, "You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream." Today I'm going to share with you a morsel of the life and culture of a most interesting man named Wallace Johnson. Wallace is a 70-year-old college student here at CU Louisville campus. Wallace is a Vietnam War veteran, and he received the Purple Heart for his sacrifices. Wallace has been a Presbyterian minister for 35 years. He retired from the Army, he retired from GE, and he retired from the police force. I've had the opportunity to get to know Wallace. We have had several classes together. He and I became friends. We share many of the same life experiences together. We were both in the Army, and we were both in combat. To allow you to see into the life of Wallace Johnson, let's take a closer look. Wallace is an African American man raised in Detroit, Michigan, rich in culture. In 1965, Wallace joined the Army and went to Vietnam. His post-military life experiences have been truly remarkable. Let's begin by looking at Wallace's early life. Wallace Johnson is an African American man, and he was raised in Detroit, Michigan. Culture is different to everyone, but it is always a learned behavior. According to Karen Donovan in Armed Forces Society 1994, culture is defined as a way of life that is learned and shared by human beings and is taught by one generation to the next. Wallace Johnson comes from a large family that helped shape him into the man he is today. He comes from a family of 7 children. His mother and father were married for 28 years before his mother died at a young age. His father worked in the GM plant in Detroit to help raise his large family. Wallace says the authority figures in his life, his mother and father, helped shape his environment. His parents taught him a lot of the values that he still has today. Wallace values friendship, family, and faith. Wallace urges to always know what is important in life. He values personality, and Wallace always strives to be himself. Wallace has many hobbies and likes. Wallace likes jazz music and gospel. His favorite gospel musician is Willie Neal Johnson, also known as the country boy of gospel. Wallace enjoys rhythm and blues as long as it's the right musician. Some of his favorite blues musicians are B.B. King and Muddy Waters. He has many of the American tastes in food. His favorite dish is pinto beans, ham hocks, and cornbread. And Wallace says that he loves a great cup of coffee. Wallace is also a big sports fan. He loves baseball, softball, and he loves basketball. Wallace played softball for 10 years. He left his family in Detroit and joined the service. In 1965, he joined the Army and went to Vietnam. He was assigned to the 1st Infantry Division. Wallace was in Vietnam from 1965, 1966, and part of 1967. He experienced many firefights and battles while he was in war. In a battle near the Cambodian border, his unit was ambushed. His unit suffered many casualties. 240 men were wounded, and 60 men were killed in action. Wallace was lucky in this battle because 2 hand grenades were thrown in his vicinity, but they didn't go off. Wallace was not so lucky at other points in the war. Wallace was struck by a landmine and burned very badly, and he received a Purple Heart for being injured in combat. He was also exposed to Agent Orange while he was in Vietnam. Wilbur J. Scott in Armed Forces and Society 1992 says, in 1969, a scientific study reported that laboratory animals exposed to trace amounts of dioxin, a Latin byproduct in Agent Orange, developed cancer and had offspring with birth defects. Wallace returned from Vietnam to begin a new life. His post-military life experiences have been truly extraordinary. After returning from Vietnam, Wallace married his wife Tina. The two of them began their marriage stationed at the Army base in Hawaii. They have 3 children together, and they have been married for 50 years. He retired from the Army as a Sergeant First Class after 23 years of service. After retirement, Wallace and his family moved to Louisville, Kentucky. In Louisville, Wallace began his ministry and his careers. Wallace became an ordained Presbyterian minister 35 years ago. He went to work at General Electric in Louisville after retiring from the service, and then he retired from GE after 28 years. He was also a traffic officer for the Louisville Metro Police Department for 12 years. Wallace has since struggled with some of the experiences from Vietnam. Wallace has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and he has suffered complications from his exposure to Agent Orange. According to Eric Vermetten in the American Association for the Advancement of Science 2007, 236,000 veterans currently have PTSD from the Vietnam War, an enormous long-term emotional and human cost of war. Wallace has battled these stumbling blocks to achieve great things in his life, including returning to college late in life. Coming back to college is a challenge for Wallace. Wallace thinks if he sees someone else in school who is having success, then he can do it too. He is careful to make the right decisions, and he is always careful about how he does things. He has truly lived a remarkable life. Wallace is an African American man. He was raised in Detroit, Michigan, and he is rich in culture. He joined the Army to leave Detroit and went to Vietnam. Wallace's post-military life experiences have been truly remarkable. In the words of the great Babe Ruth, "Every strike brings me closer to the next home run." Wallace has truly persevered through a lifetime of triumph, adversity, and even strikes, but he has always kept his eye out for that home run pitch.